Welcome to the Fast Five by Fear and Greed. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
And good morning, Adam Lang.
Good morning, Michael.
So I shouldn't sound so surprised to hear that you are there as well, because obviously we are reviewing the big stories of the year. In just 5 minutes, we're going to put forward today a big story about politics from 2022. At the end of it, we're going to decide who wins. Last time, Adam, I believe you were the winner. You also went first last time, so I'm going to go first today in the hope that it will give me the win.
Reflecting the fact that you came third last time, Michael.
We don't need to focus on who came third, Sean. That seems kind of irrelevant. The biggest political story this year was quite simply the federal election that took place back on May 21. Seems a long time ago, but it defined politics for the entire year. Despite a slightly shaky campaign, I suppose you'd say, Labor won 77 seats in the lower house, elevating Anthony Albanese to the top job. Then they hit the ground running. They set a cracking pace. The day after the election, Albo was sworn in, straight on a plane, heading for Japan to meet with the members of AUKUS. This intense focus on foreign policy. In the first month, Prime Minister or senior ministers visited kind of Japan and Fiji and Tonga and Samoa and Indonesia, Singapore, probably others that I've missed. It's not a comprehensive list. Since then, major climate change legislation, 43% reduction by 2030 passed, industrial relations reform, among a stack of other things. The election ended 9 years of coalition government, and then there was more fallout for former Prime Minister Scott Morrison. It emerged after the election that during the pandemic, he'd had himself secretly sworn in as co-minister for Health, Finance, Treasury, Home Affairs and Industry, Science, Energy and Resources. An inquiry found that it was unnecessary and undermined public trust. But really, you put it all together, that was a big, big year for politics, don't you think?
Yes, absolutely. And there's no doubt that is the biggest story of the year. But, there are sort of offshoots of that which are really interesting. So for me, what I found interesting this year is the rise of the Greens, the crossbenchers, and particularly ACT Senator David Pocock, which had the result of giving the environment so much more focus. The election changed the landscape, sweeping in a bunch of teals, mostly female candidates, who otherwise probably would have been conservative. It looked like it was going to be the year of the teals, but it just wasn't. Instead, it was the year of the Greens, who hold the balance of power in the Senate, along with the single vote of mostly David Pocock. There are 76 senators, 26 Labor, 12 Greens. What's that? 38. They need one independent to pass legislation, and that's what happened this year. As a result, we finally got environmental legislation passed. Australia now will reduce carbon emissions by 43% below 2005 levels by the end of this decade. We're going to hit net zero by 2050. That's a type of certainty that we haven't had. And it's because the Greens and David Pocock hold this balance of power. So even going forward, I think that arrangement is going to continue to be a really big political story and fascinating. Adam.
For me, the rise of Labor in 2022 has been fascinating. At a federal level, Labor's primary vote fell to its lowest level since 1934, and in the election on 21 May, they still won and they gained 10 seats around the country to have 77 members out of a total 151 in the lower house. At a state level, there are Labor governments in Victoria, Queensland, Western Australia, South Australia, the Australian Capital Territory and the Northern Territory. Victorian Labor Premier Daniel Andrews won 56 of the 88-seat Legislative Assembly on 26 November this year. South Australian Labor Premier Peter Malinowskis won 27 of the 47 seats in the House of Assembly in March. Labor is dominating around the country, and we have a New South Wales election on 25 March 2023 to see how the Liberals fare.
It's an interesting story, Adam. If New South Wales votes Labor next March, that means there'll only be one state, Tasmania, which is coalition. I wonder whether that's ever happened before.
It's an incredible story, really, isn't it?
Sure is. The rise and rise of Labor.
So, just to bring it back to the winner, do we all agree that my story was the biggest? Obviously, because you both kind of piggybacked off the back of my story. So we'll say that the biggest political story of the year was the election, and there were various other offshoots which were kind of second and third best.
Yep. No arguments from me.
Labor wins.
Thank you very much, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Adam.
Thank you, Michael.
That is it for today. Make sure you hit follow on the podcast. I'm Michael Thompson, and this is the Fast Five by Fear and Greed.